We got a problem. Transfer portal's a real problem. Well, I know that, Josh. Yeah, but let's tell the truth about it. I just want to kick off the show tonight by vowing to you that we're going to tell the truth about this stuff a little bit more. I feel it our duty, but also it's really easy because it's just commonsensical. I don't know many fans of college sports, just purely fans like we are of college sports, that look around and say, oh, everything's fine. Now, you can get into varying degrees of what is and isn't okay and what is and isn't acceptable, and I still love this or I hate this. But I think most of us who just love the game for the game look at college basketball or college football and we say, yeah, players just moving any which way they want whenever they want, probably not a good thing. And previously, you've been a little careful, maybe you've been a little hesitant to say that because you're afraid some lawyer or some agent on Twitter, it's always the internet, is going to come and say, can't say that. That means you're anti-player. We're just not going to be scared of that anymore. It's foolishness. You don't need to defend yourself against fools. None of us are anti-player. Who in the world's anti-player? Without players, you wouldn't have the game. Without happy players, you wouldn't have the game. So this comes up because recently, what was it, Jesse? It was a couple nights ago. Tom Izzo, head coach at Michigan State, goes off. Not the first coach to espouse displeasure about the current state of affairs. And normally it's the older school coaches doing it. And then anytime someone who's been doing something for a long time complains about the state of that thing, it just means that they're not progressive enough and they're not forward-thinking enough and they're just a curmudgeon and they're stuck in their ways. And it's just people who have largely never accomplished anything in their lives want to label someone who has accomplished something as something pejorative. So Izzo says what he says at his press conference. I'm not going to play it because you can imagine what he said. It's just the transfer portal in college basketball opened in the middle of March Madness. Just insanity. None of this is kids' faults, by the way. None of this is the fault of players. They're not in charge with making the rules or lack of having rules and lack of enforcing a structure and creating a structure. That's not on players. This is not anti-player. It's anti-spineless adult, brainless adult who a long time ago didn't fix things the way they should have been fixed. So after Izzo goes off, Scott Van Pelt is hosting SportsCenter. Scott Van Pelt took to the airwaves, and he in a way didn't do anything bold because speaking common sense things shouldn't be bold, but yet it is because people have been so hesitant to say what's obvious for a long time. So hats off to Scott Van Pelt, friend of Pate State, friend of the university, for saying what needed to be said. I'll echo it on the back end. Here's what Scott Van Pelt said.
This is the lunacy of what the absence of rules of any kind has created. Opening the portal the week after the round of 32 games is, as J.J. Watt pointed out on Twitter, akin to NFL free agency beginning after Wild Card Weekend. That's a perfect analogy. Anytime this is brought up, people stop listening to what I'm saying and they say, you're anti-player making any money. No, I'm not. I am anti every single player on every single team being a free agent every single year. It does not exist anywhere in professional sports, but it does in big-time college football and college basketball, sports which are fueled by unrivaled passion, and now boosters who can legally funnel that passion directly to players has created an arms race without a governor of any kind. And the number of players who enter the portal, it's a huge number, but it's almost inconsequential because in a sense, everyone is, because they can be. And they're going to be in the portal again next March. How does that make any sense to anybody?
You could have watched college sports for 50 years or 5 minutes. You know that's common sense. So it's common sense, yet it's been sort of rare to hear espoused from major platforms, at least that directly. But I'll tell you what's happened. The same thing that happened a few years ago, just in another walk of life. There was this accepted thing that was sort of dropped into the ether. And then people were scared to speak out against it, even though everyone kind of looked around and said, this kind of seems stupid, but no one really wanted to speak out against it. And then slowly but surely, everyone realized everyone felt the same way about it. And so they said, okay, we'll speak out about how stupid this is. Hey, quick time out. Check and see if you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. If you're not, I humbly ask that you click subscribe. It's free. It doesn't sign you up for anything. What it does is it helps us keep this show free so we can just do college football year round. All right, Back to the clip. Transfer portal's kind of been the same way. The state of affairs in college athletics has kind of been the same way, in that you look at it, I look at it, anyone with a functioning brain who doesn't have ulterior motive looks at it and says, this is crazy, this is dumb. And yet nothing's been done about it. And the only reason you've been kind of hesitant, and for the sake of clarity, I've been kind of hesitant to speak out on it in the past, I haven't been lately, but in the past was I felt a little uncomfortable. Because I knew there were retorts, there were follow-ups, and a lot of it was legal in nature. And I'm not a legal expert. The only bar I was concerned about in my adolescence was handlebars, monkey bars, but certainly not the bar exam. And so it gets a little intimidating because the last thing you want to do publicly is have a lawyer get in your face and drown you in legalese because you don't know how to respond. But that's the thing. It's common sense. Some of this is so commonsensical, you actually don't need a legal background. Now, you could get into the minutia of, well, they're not employees, or, well, they don't have collective bargaining power, and that's why NCAA rules aren't enforceable because they get shot down in courts. You're explaining part of a problem. We're both acknowledging there's a problem. What we have a problem with is the lack of solution in the room. It's not my job to litigate this. It's not your job sitting at home in Saskatchewan right now, go Rough Riders, to figure that out. It's not your job. Your job is to go to wherever you go to at 9 in the morning, clock out at 5, and do what it is you get paid to do. There are a lot of folks who supposedly are paid to govern college athletics who have been doing anything but over the past 20 years, so they get you in a current mess, okay? So take one has been, don't let the person who drove the car into the ditch be responsible for trying to get the car out of the ditch. That's long been a point of ours on this show. But then point two is, hey, let's not be scared to speak out about this stuff. A supermajority of us feel this way. A supermajority of fans, I can assure you a supermajority of people involved in college athletics look at it and say, this is not sustainable. This is stupid. So then the follow-up is, who are the detractors? Who are the detractors? Why in the world would you be worried to speak up about that regardless? The detractors are people with ulterior motives. Believe it or not, I know this is going to come as a shock to a lot of people. There are people who find it in their best interest for college athletics to be chaotic. And those are the kinds of people who speak out. Believe it or not, there are some folks who have thrived in this era. Vast minority of people, mind you, but there is a small but very vocal group of people who have thrived in this era. And so it's in their best interest. They have a vested interest in maintaining the status quo. But they're not you, they're not me, and they don't love this sport or college hoops for the same reason you or I love college football or college basketball, and so piss on them. You shouldn't care what they think. I certainly don't care what they think. I will tell you, again, what our North Star here is. It is what is best for college football. That's our North Star here. And once that is your sort of guiding principle, everything else aligns. Everything downstream of that becomes so much clearer. Players moving around every year at the rate they are is not good for college football. And so whatever the reasons are for the problem, you still have the problem. So you still need a solution. No matter how we got here, you still need a solution. The net result of all of this garbage, though, is it is not good for college athletics, and it is not good for college football. Coaches hate it. Most fans hate it. A lot of the players hate it. It's just they're kind of in it. They don't control the world they exist in. They just exist in that world. And, a lot of them are moving around because this is their shot to earn. It's the only shot they may ever have to earn. You'll never hear me sit here blame players for this. Players aren't the ones who set up the structure or lack thereof. But think about what makes college athletics great. Why do you love it? Like, why do you love watching college football? I'll tell you why I love it. I've loved the balance of competitiveness, but also loyalty that's always been unique to college sports. When I was growing up, I'm growing up in the South, so I'm immersed in college football. And I'm preached to about how great college football is and what separates some guy who plays at Auburn for a guy who plays for the Falcons. This guy plays for the Falcons because they drafted him and he's there on a contract. This guy plays for Auburn because he chose Auburn. and he's there 4 years, and then maybe he goes off to sell insurance, maybe he goes off to play for the Cincinnati Bengals for 10 years. But he chose Auburn, and he's loyal to Auburn. There will be someone in the comments who says, Josh, are you stupid enough to believe money never changed hands? Foolishness. Just get out of here. You understand it's apples to bowling balls compared to what it is today. So then the next guy will come in and he'll say, well, are you against players getting paid? That's what Van Pelt was saying. It's foolishness. It's nonsense. No one's against it. Hardly, so few people are actually against that I don't know anyone who's against it. I don't know coaches who are against it. I don't know fans who are against it. Imagine someone challenges you to juggle, but then they handcuff one of your hands behind your back, and you drop all the balls around you, and you start complaining about it. Are you complaining, or are you pointing out a valid problem? It's a valid problem when you're asked to juggle, but you got one hand tied behind your back. Just as when you ask coaches to build programs, and you ask them to build it on a foundation of culture and sustainability, and you ask guys to practice the virtues of patience and hard work, but then you exist in a world that rewards none of it, and it emphasizes and values none of it, and then they complain about it. It's foolish to say, well, you get paid $10 million a year. Shut up. It doesn't matter if he gets paid $10 billion a year. If it's a valid criticism or concern, it's a valid criticism or concern. So, I'm sitting around in spring. Actually, I'm not sitting around at all. I'm on different campuses every week, and it's the same refrain. So either all these guys are babies and losers, or they are tenured veterans of their profession. They've seen it done one way that works. They see it being done right now in a way that doesn't work, and it sucks, and they're calling it out. So then you move further down the wormhole, and then you have people say, well, people are still watching. People are still tuned in, so it must not be a big problem. Yeah, that's it. Because I'm still watching college football, then there must be nothing wrong with college football. College football's never been perfect, obviously. There's never been a pristine, perfect version of sports, period. There's always been a problem, varying degrees of problems, some more significant than others. Here is my contention. My contention is there are some pretty systemic problems with college athletics right now that, if left unchecked, would do irreparable harm to college athletics. I don't think they'll be left unchecked, okay? So there's the ray of sunshine for you. In fact, we got some big dates coming up that will determine the future of college football. I'm talking about college football, but college basketball just as well. Those are in the future a little ways. But, current viewership reflecting current policies of college athletics are no more correlated than the water supply in New Orleans reflecting the overall health of the Mississippi River. If you're 250, 300 miles upstream of the Mississippi and you dump poison in the river, it doesn't affect New Orleans today or tomorrow, but eventually it will. Just as piss-poor decision-making, lack of leadership, and lack of having the spine to call things out for what they are today does not impact the sport today. You could gather yourselves together and make the worst, most catastrophic decisions imaginable for college football today, and I'd still watch Texas-Oklahoma in week 1 or Texas-Ohio State in week 1, just as you would. What kind of decision-making right now, what kind of changes to college athletics right now would lead you to not watch Texas-Ohio State in week 1, would lead you to not watch Notre Dame-Miami in week 1? There's nothing. If I know you guys like I think I do, and you certainly know me, nothing's going to make us not tune into that. But could you honestly tell me what your viewership habits are going to be 10 years from now? And could you tell me in P2 and P3 terms? In other words, fans that only kind of like the product right now, and they casually tune into it, can you tell me how their viewership habits would be altered 10 years from now because of decisions being made today? No. The answer is no, you can't. And so I look at it and I say, no, it's not going to kill the sport overnight. But here's the thing that I would ask you to keep in mind. If you think college athletics are somehow immune to poor decision-making, leading to catastrophic results in viewership, which is the lifeblood of all this anyway, then I would ask you to just think back over the course of history. And I would ask you to, think back about things that once were great that aren't now, and what changed It's the only constant. So there will always be change happening. But I would also ask you in college football or college, sports, think about the signals that are already around you. For example, in the NFL, people love the draft. In college football, people used to follow recruiting hardcore. Do people pay a fraction of the amount of attention to recruiting and recruiting rankings that they used to? The answer is no. The reason is because the current state of affairs has deemed them invalid in your mind because you think, well, what does it matter? If this guy's going to move around 3 or 4 times in his career, potentially, what do I care that he just committed to Oklahoma State? It's valid. Now, that didn't make you stop watching college football, but it certainly eroded a layer of the fabric of what used to attach you to college football. That is one of many examples that you could point out of the adhesive, the conduit between fan/viewer and product that's eroded. And if you keep doing that or keep allowing that to happen, then you wind up with a mess in your hands. But here's the real problem. The problem is once you realize it's a problem, it's too late. It's why you have to be very proactive in this sort of thing. To go back to the poisoning of the river analogy, once the poison arrives downstream, it's too late because the poison got dumped in the water 300 miles upstream a week ago. So the answer was make sure a week ago it didn't happen. Just as in college athletics right now, the answer is not let's wait until we start bleeding viewership, then we'll address the problem. Then we'll know there's a problem. Any idiot realizes there's a problem once the symptoms are right in front of you. It takes, in a position of leadership, the ability to see around the corner. So in college athletics right now, forget about whether you're going to piss off an agent. Speak the truth anyway. Forget about whether someone's going to come at you and say, oh, you're against players' rights. Speak the truth anyway, because you're not. Players have never had it better in the history of college athletics than they do now. And starting this year, that really gets ramped up because you're splitting $20.5 million amongst your rosters in the major conferences. Players have never had it better. Also, if you'll notice, there's a significant lack of player complaint about players' rights right now. Did you notice that? The folks yelling about players' rights 95% of the time aren't players. And it's not because players are little baby deer who are too innocent and naive to speak for themselves. It's because the players know they've got it as good as anyone's ever had it in the history of college athletics. And there's some adults over there. You're going to have to look way over there because they're in the real dark corner of the room. But those are the ones being propped up and profiting off the current state of affairs, as broken as they may be. And so they're the ones incentivized for the brokenness to continue. You don't benefit off this. I don't benefit off this. And believe it or not, players don't benefit off of it because culture and continuity and multi-year investment in working hard for something, I know this is dirty and bygone in nature, but it's actually a good thing. It's very good elements to have in college football. Josh, there are 37 different legal layers to this. I know. Figure it out. Figure it out.